So the final topic I want to talk about is esports, because obviously I'm pretty sure we're fully inundated with esports at the moment, and I'm loving it. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, which is really crazy. And I can't remember who tweeted. I think it was a Formula One driver, I think, or like a pundit or something. I think it was like Karun Chandok or something, who said, why are people moaning about how much esports there is at the moment? Would you moan about every motorsport happening on that same weekend, for example? Like, it's exactly the same, like, rather than being inundated with esports. But I think it's been actually great, for coverage and for people watching motorsport. Obviously, we've had Formula One doing lots of stuff. IndyCar have gotten on the act. MotoGP have done some. And NASCAR have done some as well. But Formula E haven't yet, and I really want to discuss this because I want to know why. Because Formula E have a platform in R Factor 2 which Formula E drivers are driving on, such as Maximilian Gunther and former Formula E driver Felix Rosenqvist are driving on, and I think even Stoffel van Dorn has access to R Factor 2. So I'm sure, Formula E drivers who are racing in these esports series have access to places like R Factor 2. I just think at this precise moment, Formula E is missing out. Ed, what do you think? Would you like to see Formula E really grab esports and run with it?
Definitely, and it's interesting because I wrote an article about this a while back before the current situation with the outbreaks and everything of the pandemic. There was talking about Formula E's history in esports and how basically there was so much potential that it's not really been realised. And you think back to the Vegas E race. Me and Pico commented on some of the qualifiers back in the day, and that was a lot of fun. I remember, but it's moved on actually. I think to do since then as well. That because back then it was a mod basically that had been made for the game by Cloud Sport, which is a small company from Madrid, and now the actual developers of R Factor 2, Studio 397, developed official DLC with I think Hong Kong official track on there, and a couple of
Yeah.
R Factor 2. Great thing about it is it has a very dedicated sort of online modding community, and it was the same with the first R Factor as well. That makes a lot of tracks and custom drivers and stuff like that, so you can almost sort of put yourself in the game if you really want to, or your own sort of custom helmet anyway. And yeah, I guess with the success we've seen in Formula One, they've got the Codemasters Formula One games, which have obviously been a staple and released every year, and in my opinion, a little bit buggier than they should be at times. But I don't mean that to sort of criticize game developers too much, but I do think sometimes there are occasions when it looks a little silly. And I think Formula ever since Vegas have for some reason I think just sort of been scared off of esports. I guess Vegas didn't go entirely to plan, as we all remember that there are a couple of teething problems, but it's a shame in a way. And I think Formula, if they took a plunge, partnered up with someone like, say, The Race, have been doing their own esports. There's a media outlet that was launched this year for 2020, has a lot of has a pretty strong esports department, I have to say, and some really enjoyable races, professional looking races there. So yeah, for me it's more fun as well if it's and I'm going on a bit here, but for me it's more fun if it's people taking it more seriously. You can have celebrity drivers doing it for fun, which I know Formula One have done a couple of their races, and I think that's all well and good. But for me personally, I always enjoy people taking it a bit more seriously, trying to get really fast times out of it, rather than people who barge into each other all the time. That's just my preference.
I think you want some entertainment, but I think it's
Yeah,
been, as I said, I think it's been great, and I think Formula One have done. It wasn't Formula One at in essence that started. It was Veloce Esports that really kicked off with, which is funded by John Eric Verne, or it's owned by John Eric Verne, and John Eric Verne was starting a Formula One thing. So I don't know why. He didn't really sort of maybe push a Formula E. Maybe that's coming in his sort of pipeline. He's maybe talking about Formula E. I know of R Factor 2, for example, they've got two official tracks on there, which is Hong Kong and Monaco. And maybe, as you said, maybe because they don't really have a platform where there's Formula E tracks, for example, that are official, that is actually a really good sim community. Because obviously all the Formula E tracks are on R Factor 2, but they've been modded by someone who's done a fabulous job of modding them, because I've been on them and they're fantastic. But maybe Formula E are scared of going onto R Factor 2 and using stuff that other people have made and it's not official, and then they're like, well, we've only got Hong Kong and Monaco, so we're going to run out of official tracks very quickly. But then at the same time, if someone's actually made a track and Formula E are happy with that track, they could contact that person and say, well, hey, do you want to make this official or something? Or, I don't know. There's something that could be done to sort of make those tracks official. There was talks of the London track for R Factor 2. The London track would be at the XL, becoming an official track on R Factor 2. But obviously, I don't know how that will come about at this precise moment. But I think maybe Formula E have just fallen behind on the actual getting prepared for esports and being more proactive. Because as you said, the Vegas race was a leap of faith, basically. Completely modded track that was representative of Las Vegas, but then it had the infamous Ollie Pakala situation, who they implemented fan boost, and what happened was Ollie Pakala won the fan boost, deployed the fan boost, but the fan boost never stopped. So basically, as soon as he deployed it, it never turned off. So he had that extra power boost. That's not his fault, but at the same time, they were racing for 100 grand, which was shared. And 100 grand to these sim races is a lot of money. Like, even if it's shared. And Ollie Pakala finished third. I'm pretty sure it was third he finished. So he was equivalent to like 25 grand that he was going to win or something like that. And that's taken away from him. And I'm like, how can you make a mistake? That what infuriated me is, how can you as a company make a mistake of your system didn't work and you're robbing this guy of 25 grand? Yes, he may have won it unfairly because he had the extra power, granted, but it wasn't his fault. That's a lot of money for him that's just been taken away from him.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think that, Jack, maybe is probably one of the reasons why they've shied away from it at this precise moment.
Well, yeah. Firstly, I'd love to see a Formula E game. Genuinely thought Formula E should get someone on that relatively swiftly, because they could even they could just make it, and then they could just add tracks when we go to new tracks, and yeah, it would be incredibly fun with the whole esports thing. I do find it I do feel like Formula E have fallen behind now, because they were with the Vegas race. They were really the first. They were really the
They
first
were the
people to
pioneers,
actually
yeah.
to go out, do it, and then Formula One clocked on a couple years ago, and then Formula E just really descended into nothing. But also, one thing I would like to point out is that Max Verstappen is not competing in the virtual F1 races, because that's on the official F1 game, and he only uses R Factor. So I think if Formula E do something, this is the closest we're going to get to Max Verstappen in a Formula E car, which I'd quite like to see. So
Yeah,
yes.
I think that would be amazing.